Ignition sequence start. 3, 2, 1. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. Tower clear.
We got a roll program.
Welcome, friends, to the Pioneers of the Independent Networks. I'm your host, Ricky Blues. This is your co-host, Tim Walker. And Tim, where are we coming from this week?
Well, we're coming from an undisclosed location.
Wow.
Due to military reasons.
And friends, if you've joined us in the past, you know that we bring you all the characters, the matches, the feuds, the promotions that populated the Mid-Atlantic independent wrestling scene from the 1980s to today. 4 decades worth of archive material. We've brought you one more guest today, a very, very special guest.
That wasn't easy to do either.
It wasn't.
We really had to track this fella down.
And when the production crew said, hey, this is our guest this week, I started having early 1990-91 flashbacks saying, this guy beat me up all the time. We sure we're going to be able to contain him? So without further ado, let's introduce our guest this week, none other than Agent Orange.
Good to be here. It's very strange to be sitting here this close to you and not want to take your head off.
Both of us smiling. The good thing is...
Well, let me take that back. I still do want to take your head off, but it's just not the appropriate place right now.
Right, and the only reason I can say is because you've taken off your mantle for now, the cowl, sat it down, and you're discussing this as a civil human being. You're a very special guest for us, and we appreciate you coming out here. Because you are, as Tim and I have mentioned on many occasions, a true pioneer of those early days. So thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. I know that we have a long history, and as a result, there is definitely an earned respect between us. Whether that history was good, bad, or indifferent, the respect was always there.
And that's the truth. That's the truth.
So I appreciate those nice words. It was a great time to be in the business.
It absolutely was.
It was, like you said, it was on the forefront of modern day wrestling. Things were changing. Things were evolving from the old style wrestling and the old wrestlers and the heavy set guys that kicked and punched but really couldn't work, to the new era of maybe not the biggest guys in the ring, but pound for pound, just as tough, just as strong as the heavyweights, but a hell of a lot more agile, a hell of a lot more athletic, and we were able to do things that the big guys just looked at and shook their heads and said, not this big boy.
Bruce, can you tell me about your early days in wrestling and how you got your start?
Well, actually, my start happens before I became a wrestler. I'm in college, University of Maryland, College Park, and I have a friend who's got a 3-hour block on the campus radio station. He did a 3-hour comedy show, and I approached him one day about taking a piece of that show, maybe an hour, and devoting it to wrestling. Didn't know that the guy was a wrestling maniac fan like I was, and that he was going to jump at the opportunity. And the next thing I know, we have a 3-hour wrestling show. The hell with the comedy. So, long story short, we're able to get, because now we're able to get press passes to go backstage to the Civic Center and the Cap Center and get backstage and do interviews with these guys. Now, not like today where you can take your iPhone and just go in with an interview. I'm talking the old-fashioned tape recorder and the little microphone that you got to stick in somebody's face and all that crap that you had to bring with you, and it sounded like crap when you recorded it and
transcribe it later.
But this is how I got the first opportunity to go behind the curtain and see some of what was going on. Things were still kayfabe back then, so even though I was press and was backstage, I only got so far. You know, you get past the first curtain, but you don't get back where the boys were. So we would wait out there, and they would send guys out, and we would interview them, and then we would go back and play the interviews on the radio station, and after that, we would take calls. And the thing that we used to enjoy the most was no matter who you were, whenever you called in, you were wrong. And we took exactly the opposite take. If you called in and talked to us about how fake pro wrestling was, we turned it right around because you were a moron, because wrestling was real. It was the most pure sport in the world. It had an athletic commission. How could it not be a sport? The next guy would call, I agree with you guys. It's 100% real. What, are you a moron? Have you never watched it? So this was my first introduction into the world of professional wrestling, where you could fluidly change back and forth from heel to face without even thinking about it, and that's what really appealed to me.
So I really enjoy that. That is
That's
so
interesting.
unique.
Yeah.
That is pretty awesome. So that sparks the interest. Now that you've seen just a quick peek behind the curtain, that sparks the interest of you moving in that, because you're a young man, you're in college.
Absolutely.
You're now say, I want to move in that direction. I can do this.
Well, it's also an extension of who I was at the time. I had been involved in wrestling as a kid, and been involved in the rec leagues and all the way up through high school, and wrestled for my high school, and at University of Maryland tried to walk on to the wrestling team. I survived about a semester. I wasn't on scholarship. I wasn't getting any financial aid to go there. And the problem with wrestling was you'd get done your classes, you'd go to practice for 3 hours, and if you were lucky, you could get to the dining hall right before it closed, but nobody was going to sit next to you and eat, because nobody could sit next to you and eat. It was hard enough sitting next to yourself and eating at that point. But so my my wrestling background, and the reason that I really wanted to get involved in wrestling was A, the showmanship, B, I already knew what I was doing on the mat. I knew about holds and counter holds and reversals, and I thought I knew enough to get started. That was one of the first misconceptions about pro wrestling. But I knew enough to find my way into Westminster.
Okay.
School, found my way to Westminster. Rip Sawyer, Sid Garrison, Rip Sawyer's Westminster Wrestling, I think Carroll County All-Stars,
Carroll
I
County
believe.
All-Stars.
And you're talking about Sledgehammer McGill.
Right.
You're talking about Rip Sawyer was one of the founders. At that point, I'm Hurricane Mitchell, and my tag team partner, Bob Orca, the Killer Whale. We were the California Coolers. California's coolest.
So we've had Rip on the show in the past, as you're well aware of. Rip said that he put in a advertisement in the newspaper for bringing guys together who wanted to jump on board at ground level. Is that what you do? Did you see that? Did someone tell you that?
That's the first time I've ever heard that.
Right.
I'm not sure exactly where I heard the information from. It came from a friend or something who knew I was interested in wrestling and knew that there was some sort of promotion happening in Westminster. So I went and checked it out, and we were in the gigantic rec building that was adjacent to one of the churches that was in Westminster, and we were about as no frills as you can get. We didn't even have a ring. We had a platform, and there was some padding under the platform, but it wasn't in all the areas.
A rep said they had the occasion of renting a ring occasionally, but it was always a boxing ring, and there would have been the fourth rope, and you'd had to take the fourth rope out. That was an incredible training ground.
Yes.
I didn't have the fortune of that, but that had to be an incredible training ground.
If you can take bumps in a boxing ring, you can take them in any ring.
Stick in the middle, stiff all the way around.
Yeah. That nice hard center, not the soft chewy center like now.
Now, when we showed a little bit about the Carroll County All-Stars earlier in Season 3, we had a quick clip of the California Coolers against, I think it was Mr. Destiny and Mr. X. So join us here for just a quick stroll, just a quick snippet, as we go back and join Hurricane Mitchell as part of the California Coolers. Fans, take a look.
Well, that was really embarrassing. Skinny, no concept of ring psychology. Really, really embarrassing and hard to watch. But thanks, really appreciate you bringing that out of the woodwork.
It's a good thing because it is actually part of history, and I mean I particularly enjoyed
Yeah, right.
the ring attire. They were Reebok tennis shoes, I do believe.
They might have been Keds.
Keds.
Yeah, or Chucks.
The California
I don't know if Reebok
Coolers
was making tennis shoes
at
way
that
back
time.
then.
That's right.
I think I'm on his side if he's got a nice stick here.
Oh yeah, I've felt the brunt of that on more than one occasion. There, I'm going to acquiesce right now.
There is nothing like an old friend.
I'm starting to feel uncomfortable.
Don't worry. He's your old friend too.
Yes, yes.
Well, after Westminster, where did your career progress from there?
Well, let's see. After the bright lights of Westminster and the fame and fortune and accolades that brought with it, we then moved to the luxurious, I don't even remember the name of the boxing hall that we were in. It was an old gym, and there was a boxing ring. Again, back to the boxing ring in
Right.
a nice stiff center, and a great way to learn. And we would get in there and we would wrestle, and off to the side there were the guys who were training in boxing, and so, you know, who knows who was training down there while we were.
That was the Health and Fitness Palace on North Avenue. What we
and Fitness
commonly
Palace.
refer to as the North Avenue Gym.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
So
North
that-
Avenue Gym. That's right.
Yep. So and back in that time when you get there, that's Joey Maggs, that's Jim Leon, I think like Bob Starr, Dave McAllister, Axel Rotten had gotten in.
That's actually a little bit before some of those guys'
Okay.
times. It was Jimmy Leon and Joey Maggs, Dave Coleman.
The surgeon.
Dave Coleman was one of the guys who I got a lot of training from, and I learned a lot from. He was, at that point, the mold of what you would consider a professional wrestler. He was a big guy. He looked big, and he picked me up and threw my ass around the ring like I was a rag doll. And I came back, and he did it again, and I kept coming back. And you know, the more you come back, the more you gain somebody's trust, the more they realize, all right, the kid's not going to quit on me, at which point then they start showing you some things. But Bob Starr was a little bit after that. I think he came in towards the tail end of that. I think he was busy with some other things, doing some other work.
I know he was up in Delaware for a period at that time too, as
Right.
well,
Right.
with Jim Kettner's group up in Delaware.
Right, I'm familiar with those guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, no, that was and then one day while we're working out, in comes Brian Knighton for the first time, kid who just wants to come in and get involved in pro wrestling. And I looked at him and thought, this kid never gonna have a chance. He was young and big, but not in a good way big, and not athletic, not in shape. I thought to myself, how's this kid ever gonna do anything in the ring? And he wound up finding his niche.
Right.
He was not the best technical wrestler
Right.
by far of that group, but he found something that worked for him. The gimmick that that he eventually evolved into, Axel Rotten, was a good gimmick for him and his size and his abilities and what he was able to do well, and it was a good cushion to insulate him from the things that he did not do well.
Right.
And then if you take that a little further, again, Axel not being the best quote unquote worker in the business, but his timing, when you look at ECW and their evolution from a wrestling organization to the Extreme Wrestling, and somehow that was just the right fit for Axel. That's when Brian really became Axel and really evolved into the person that most of us remember
Right.
at that point. With blood streaming down his head, with blood streaming down his arm, and he was usually not the most bloody of the two guys in the ring.
Right.
So, regardless of what you think of him as a worker, for the style of wrestling that ECW was promoting at the time, he was the poster boy.
Mm-hmm. He was the fit for Extreme.
Yeah,
He was.
it was the right style of wrestling for him because it played to his strong points. It played to the kicking and the punching and the swinging the chairs and using the illegal objects and and things of that nature, which of course I never would have done in my career.
Well, I was going to try and see if we could segue right off of that, but you've given me the answer because you, in the guise of not Hurricane Mitchell, who was really a babyface, but the alter ego, Agent Orange, you were notorious for not only a billy club, but a Kevlar helmet. And I do remember an occasion or two of an orange or purple mist sprayed in my eyes that cost me a match or two. So you had a slight tinge of extreme or extremism in you. How did you go from looking at this wholesome, clean cut, I guess Don Ho wearing shirt, as a California Cooler, slapping hands and high fiving with the fans, to the dreaded Pumpkinhead that evolved?
Don't get me started.
I know.
Don't get me started.
That evolved in probably one of the most notorious heels in the Mid-Atlantic area. Everyone knew you because of that chant. And they only knew you because of that chant, because of your ability, and that was the hook. They wanted to get back at you because you were such a good heel as that. How did you come up with that alter ego? Where did that come from?
Well, Agent Orange really is more of a natural extension of my personality than Hurricane Mitchell ever was. I like the idea of Hurricane Mitchell. Yeah, he was a baby face. He was kind of cool, and chicks digged him, of course. But it was hard for me to always smile and shake the people's hands and want to be friendly with them, because I really didn't want to be friendly with them. I was better than those people. I didn't need to associate with them or shake their hands or pander to them for their affections. But you have to play the character that you're developing. So I did what I had to do at the time, and but when I went to work for other promotions, if you go to another promotion and you want to protect your character, you want to protect the promotion you're working for, you don't want to go to a rival promotion or a next territory down the road and do something that's going to have a negative impact on your persona and your character back in your main in your main promotion.
Right, where you might be getting a push, or they're moving you along in a certain storyline.
Exactly. So Hurricane Mitchell was moving up the ranks, but there were opportunities to go and wrestle for other promotions. And that's what we were all trying to do at that point, was expand, our territory of where we were able to wrestle and where we were able to get work. So in order to go to work for those other promotions, in order to show the promoters that, I had the right attitude, I was willing to, do what needed to be done in the ring, I developed this persona of Agent Orange. Again, it goes back to a buddy of mine who lived in California at the time, who sent me a wrestling mask because he knew I was involved in wrestling. And I looked at this thing and I thought, I could do something with this. And so I put on the mask, and I put on the camouflage, and I put on the Kevlar helmet, and I went out, and Agent Orange was essentially to protect Hurricane Mitchell. Agent Orange could go and wrestle, and if he lost, it didn't hurt Hurricane Mitchell. But as I became Agent Orange and could turn around and yell at the people in the stands and beat up the baby face and not have to smile at people and not have to shake hands, a whole new world opened up to me. And I thought to myself, this feels a whole lot more natural. And so I just let the evil side of my personality take over. And boy, what a ride it was.
Bruce, you've given us an incredible amount of information, and we're just starting. I love the whole background archive, and that's the stuff that our fans want. So for this week, I thank you for joining us, and I'm hoping you'll join us again next week as we continue this episode.
I can probably fit it into my schedule.
And take our friends on that proverbial stroll down Concussion Lane and continue this talk about our pioneer, Agent Orange.
I'm sure they can't wait.